The late 1950s and early 1960s were a time of profound growth for the civil rights movement in the United States. Although racial segregation in the public schools had been outlawed in 1954, the ruling applied only to this one category of discriminatory practice in U.S. society. But it furthered within the African American community the anticipation of broader changes. It was in this climate that the student sit in demonstrations of the early 1960s were born. The technique of the sit in was simple: African Americans occupying whites only seats in racially segregated establishments. But this new type of student activism galvanized established civil rights organizations, brought about the creation of new ones, and generated support for the civil rights movement among many new segments of the populace. So, we should, I hope, determine that the main point is this final sentence. Everything to that point is really going to be a bit of background information. And if you want a little bit more background information, you can choose to highlight one of these sentences. But I would argue that it's probably best to only highlight the final sentence, because all of the other sentences prior to that yellow highlighted sentence really function as equitable background. And if you highlight one sentence over another, you might overemphasize that piece of information over everything else. And when you're dealing with the highlighting, part of the goal is to make sure that you're highlighting only the big picture stuff so that you aren't implicitly overemphasizing any specific details for later questions. So now that we've got this final sentence of the opening paragraph highlighted, we will do the same, read the second paragraph in full, and then consider which sentence best captures the author's main idea of that second paragraph. Initiated by four students of the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College, the first sit in occurred at a lunch counter in February 1960. Sit ins then spread rapidly through the southern United States, involving over 70,000 participants by August 1961. The sit ins provided an important model for nonviolent protest and showed students that they could affect the political process. The influence of these demonstrations on the determination of the student activists was particularly visible in two events: the formation of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the birth of a second form of sit ins called Freedom Rides. So I would once again state that the final sentence best captures the author's main idea about the building of the sit in movement.